You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I know the sky is falling, but I think the coaches are looking at different schemes and people, and remember what happened the second game of last year and how it ended up. Steven, thank you so much for the comment. Thank you so much for joining the live show. In regard to last year, it's not as cut and dry as, FIU is just Bowling Green 2.0. I'll start there. Bowling Green was unique from the sense of still first year with Andy Kotelnicki, first year with Tom Allen, and the defense that they wanted to run was totally flipped over. It was flipped completely on its head when KJ Winston had left the game. And Bowling Green was a significantly better team than both FIU, Nevada, anybody else. That's probably one of the better. I would say it's comparable to Appalachian State from 2018 in that regard. These games happen. That is what I'm trying to point out, is that you have a Clemson versus Troy situation, okay? Where some of these non-conference games will just sneak up on you. Penn State is trying a bunch of different things. So we bring it back to the present. Okay, so Bowling Green was a little more defined by new offensive system, new defensive system, not the best versions of it. I know this is fun to say when on the heels of, hey, this wasn't the greatest game from the offense, but Drew Allar, Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen, this offensive line were not as good as they are now. And I know the tangible results don't actually say that, but this group is better than what that was last year at this time. Combine that with two new coordinators in week 2, off of the high of playing West Virginia on the road going into Morgantown. And, again, speaking of West Virginia, they lost to Ohio, right? Stephen makes a great point here. And I like to think that's how I'm looking at it, is that Penn State, people will scoff at James Franklin saying, we're trying some rotations and everything else. Also, this is something that popped up on my drive home. Does Penn State really want to, again, throw the kitchen sink at FIU? Or do they want to keep, show some wrinkles, but keep the game plan basic? You're not going to put your best foot forward when it comes to scheming, game planning. You are going to put a level 1, level 2 playbook together. If it works, see, Penn State is good enough to where, you're playing one of your worst days of football, or you don't have your best on one side of the football. It's still okay because we can win 34-0, but still leading 20-0. Again, they scored, those 2 touchdowns fairly late in the game. Definitely garbage time. I would say this game primarily stopped at 20-0. That is really that's why I say the scoreboard's deceiving. Sky is not falling. The core from the semifinal team is back, aside from Abdul Carter and Tyler Warren. They have those week 2 jitters. I look at this game as, hey, rainy, just some inclement weather, right? This isn't a game that just the 1-0 mentality is great, and I'm glad that they emphasize it because they need to, because then you get in situations where you don't have your best, and then you lose to an opponent you're not supposed to. In that same breath, though, these are human beings. Everyone's looking forward to the whiteout against Oregon. Nobody is interested in this non-conference schedule from the Penn State side of things. Of course, Penn State does need to win these games. But when I mean that generally speaking. The Big Ten conference slate, the playoff, this is about ironing out the wrinkles between teams that you are significantly better than. Nevada, FIU, Villanova next week. Am I expecting more of the same against Villanova? Not necessarily. Just because I think it's the level in competition that Penn State's just going to be so much better than Villanova, again, an FCS team. But I do see them being maybe a little more motivated to kind of try to prove it before going into the bye week. Penn State's just very conscious of, they play Oregon to open up the Big Ten conference slate. You can't afford to go 10-2. in this season. I don't think you can if you're Penn State. You can only afford to drop either of Ohio State and Oregon, and I guess preferably the Ohio State game if we had to pick one. So it's a long-winded answer to say, yes, I agree with the first comment from Steven. So again, looking for your questions, your comments, conversational, Q&A, open discussion. There's no such thing as a bad question. There's no such thing as a bad idea. We're kind of spitballing a lot here just to figure out where Penn State is headed. I'm still very glass half full when it comes to this team. National title, this did not change my thoughts. One bad game, and not by the defense, not by the collectively. This team was not bad collectively. It was a poor first half by the offense that has 3 brand new wide receivers. Tyler Warren, what was the tight end? That was the offense with Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. In some sort of sense, Andy Kotelnicki's system is a little bit new, but there are plays where the offensive line isn't getting. The offensive line is still trying to gel, but they're going to gel quicker. Remember, that was a group last year that they were okay. They were middle of the road for the entirety of the season. Then it clicked in the Big Ten championship game. I think they're going to have that aha moment, hopefully in the Oregon game. But it would be nice but then, right? And go figure that it's Oregon all over again. That's my theory. That's kind of the best case scenario, though. And that doesn't mean that they're going to play perfect, but they're going to have some of these issues figured out. You're going to see a more in-depth playbook that just gives a lot of extra leverage for this Penn State team overall. It's a vanilla game plan against FIU, against Nevada. You're winning on sheer talent alone. All right, one comment down. Let's keep moving. Can the Drew Allar experience be over, please? And this live show is brought to you by DoorDash. So the weekend is here, and it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, when you can save more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most, so let's break it down. I'm going to go with a wide receiver again. For Penn State, I'll go with Devontae Ross. He delivered in a big way because we know that receiver has not been the position of strength for Penn State. Last week, I said it was Trevor Pena and Kyron Hudson. This week, I'm going to go with Devontae Ross just because he solidifies that trio. A one-handed catch, pass interference by the defensive back. Devontae Ross is not known as that catch in traffic type of receiver, but made that kind of play. He came through, no hesitation, no delay. And if you've been following along, you know that this performance is not a fluke. And just like Devontae Ross delivered for Penn State, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You can save every Saturday that you order. Stack it up over all season. You could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. And today's episode is also brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who choose to do more than just simply move. They follow what moves them every time they drive. And that's what makes Mazda stand out. They go beyond safety, beyond style and performance to deliver a driving experience that feels alive in every detail. As an athlete focuses on every detail themselves, Mazda does the same. From metallic accents to hand-stitched Napa leather, you can feel it the moment you get behind the wheel. The smooth handling, intuitive controls, standard all-wheel drive in every crossover SUV. So whether it's a quick drive to practice or a weekend road trip, Mazda makes even everyday drives feel special. It's the small details that make the big plays. And just like there's more to every player, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda. Move and be moved. Don't look at the Beau Pribula box score either, right? Just to add fuel to the fire. So I'm surprised we haven't seen that right out of the gate. We will see more of that that Penn State chose the wrong quarterback, went with Drew Allar, and they should have went with Beau Pribula. Drew Allar is the better quarterback. I can say that. A lot of that has to do with game plan, scheme, game script. Missouri and Kansas turned into an offensive shootout. It demanded that Beau Pribula kept going and having the passing volume and getting into rhythm and going back and forth with that Kansas Jayhawks team. The playbook was also a lot deeper for that Missouri team. And Beau Pribula is a good quarterback. Drew Allar would put up the same numbers in that situation, maybe even better. It's hard to say. I think Beau was, again, I'm going to pull up stats and stuff to kind of look around, keep an eye on some ball games. I think Beau, off the top of my head, was 30 of 39. Let's see if I can find that game. There we go. 30 of 39, so I had that one right. 334 yards, 3 touchdowns. I feel like Drew Allar is also able to do that in that given situation. Aside from a couple of turnovers, he did that against USC, right? So the Allar experience, it hasn't been, this has been a fair assessment of it, is that it's, I think Penn State fans, and even me to an extent back when, was that most people maybe assumed, or maybe some, okay, there was a substantial amount of people, or enough to say that Drew Allar was thought to be maybe the same type of experience that Trevor Lawrence gave Clemson. I think that's fair. That those were the subtle expectations that, oh, this is the 5-star quarterback. This is the top tier prospect. He should be able to lead them to multiple national championships. And that didn't happen. So and not everyone's going to go on the record and say, yes, I thought Drew Allar was Trevor Lawrence 2.0 coming out of college. That's not what I'm trying to say here. I'm trying to say is that Allar would have been able to will his team to victory similarly to Trevor Lawrence during those prime Clemson years. And that wasn't the case. So I think there's just kind of a disappointment factor that Allar has not been the consensus #1 overall NFL draft pick, because after his freshman year, everybody viewed Trevor Lawrence as a future #1 overall draft pick. How many other quarterbacks can we say, and what? I didn't watch Peyton Manning play in college, but over the past 2 decades of following this and trying to comprehend it as a kid, but now understanding the game a lot better, how many quarterbacks in college did we know were going to be a surefire first round or #1 overall quarterback from the word go for 4 consecutive years? So I think that's when I see that, I want to move on from Drew Allar, or Drew's exhausting, or he's not a good QB, anything like that. It's because Allar carries that 5-star pedigree. It kind of is the nature of the territory. And it's just disappointing because he's not another version of Trevor Lawrence, but there aren't many versions of that in college football, if any, especially over the past 2 decades. Like I said, I can't speak to how Peyton Manning did in the late 90s because I was 2-3 years old and I did not watch that, and I have no recollection of it. Even though I can watch documentaries on it, I still don't have that same comprehension of seeing it firsthand. Should we be concerned with this team's performance in the first 2 weeks with how Oregon and Ohio State have looked so far? With Ohio State, so I'm going to speak respectively to the teams. So I will be honest, my confidence level in both of those games has taken a step back, not because of Penn State, but because what Oregon and Ohio State have shown. So it's more about buying into the respect of Oregon and Ohio State as the opponent. My opinion's not really any different of Penn State. I believe this team has the capability of going undefeated. I think they still can. But Oregon looks a lot better than I anticipated. Ohio State looks a lot better than I anticipated. And that's not a significant jump, but you kind of go from that, okay, are they there? I had them in the middle of tier 1 and tier 2, where they're just on the outside looking in, and now both of them kind of move up to, they're firmly in tier 1 and they might be at the top, and both of them might be at the top of tier 1. So that's how I view it. In regards to Oregon, in this game against Oklahoma State, it's a Power 4 school, Big 12. Oklahoma State is not the Oklahoma State that people remember. Starting QB, really good starting QB, at least somebody that would have been respectable, that was going to have a breakout season for them. Injured, might be out for, I think he's out for the season. He's definitely out. We'll use Penn State verbiage, long-term bumps and bruises for Oklahoma State's quarterback. The Cowboys were predicted to finish lower in the Big 12. Oregon definitely threw most of the kitchen sink at Oregon, Oregon threw most of the kitchen sink at Oklahoma State, because that's a Power 4 team. You were going to give them that due respect. That is a Mike Gundy-led team. His days might not be, they might be counting down the days to regime change in Oklahoma State, because I just don't think it's working with Mike Gundy. He just hasn't adapted to the times. It's the same thing with Florida, right? Billy Napier should be finding cardboard boxes and looking on LinkedIn and all the different employment sites, because, wow. So my confidence in Oregon as a team, my assessment of them has changed. My assessment of Ohio State, which I did not think would be as elite defensively. I thought it would take them some time, and they shut down the number 1 Texas Longhorns at the time. My opinion of Penn State, it's no different. Are there things that they need to work on? Yes, but again, a couple of bad plays or bad drives, communication, it's not a lack of talent. It is not a talent issue. It is simply communication. And Penn State, as the first comment pointed out, which I will continue to do, is trying different things. And they are not going to show everything against feeble competition.